The Veth soldiers had turned the community hall into their barracks. What was once a place where humans gathered to celebrate birthdays and hold town meetings now smelled of alien sweat and weapons oil. Broken chairs lay piled in corners. Children's drawings had been torn from the walls and used as kindling. Commander Torval sat in the center of the room, on a chair that was too small for his massive frame. His gray skin was covered in ritual scars that told the story of his conquests. 23 worlds, 41 battles. Not once had he faced an enemy he could not crush. The humans of Meridian 7 had been no different. They had fallen like all the others. "Look at this," said one of his soldiers, a young warrior named Keth. He held up a book with a colorful cover. The image showed a human figure flying through clouds, a red cape flowing behind him. "They worship flying creatures." Laughter filled the room. More soldiers gathered around, passing the book between their clawed hands. They flipped through pages filled with images of impossible beings. Men who could lift buildings. Women who controlled lightning. Children with the power to read minds. "This one shoots fire from his hands," said another soldier, holding up a different book. "And this one can run faster than light itself." Torval reached out and took the book. He studied the images with genuine curiosity. The artwork was detailed and clearly important to the humans who had made it. They had spent considerable time and resources creating these fantasies. "Fetch the translator," he ordered. Two soldiers left and returned moments later with an old human woman. Her hair was white and thin. Her skin was wrinkled and spotted with age. She walked with difficulty, her joints stiff from sleeping on the cold floor of her cell, but her eyes were sharp. They missed nothing. Her name was Dr. Elena Vasquez. Before the invasion, she had been a xenoanthropologist at the colony's university. She had spent her life studying how different species created culture and meaning. Now she spent her days translating documents for her captors. The soldiers pushed her forward until she stood before Torval. She did not bow. She did not tremble. She simply waited. "Explain these," Torval said, gesturing to the pile of books and images his soldiers had collected. "What are these creatures your people worship?" Elena looked at the scattered materials. Comic books, mythology collections, religious texts, children's stories, fantasy novels. Her captors had gathered them all together without understanding the differences between them. "They are not all the same thing," she said. "Some are religious figures, some are fictional characters, some are ancient myths, some are modern entertainment. But they share a theme," Torval said. He was not stupid. Elena had learned that quickly. The Veth had conquered dozens of species not through brute force alone, but through cunning and strategy. "Your people are obsessed with beings of great power. Gods, heroes, monsters." He leaned forward. "Why?" "All species tell stories," Elena said carefully. "It is how we understand ourselves." "The Veth tell stories of our ancestors' victories," Torval said. "We celebrate real achievements, real power, real conquest." He threw a book at her feet. It was a collection of Greek mythology. "Your people invent fantasies because you have no real victories to celebrate." The soldiers laughed again. Elena did not react. "Your kind dreamed of power because you had none," Torval continued. "You invented gods because you were weak. You created heroes because you needed to believe someone would save you." He stood up, towering over her. "Tell me, human, did praying to these fantasies help when our ships darkened your sky? Did your imaginary heroes come to rescue you?" Elena bent down slowly and picked up the book. She held it gently, as if it were precious. "You misunderstand," she said quietly. "Then educate me." Torval spread his arms wide. "I am curious about the psychology of a conquered species. Help me understand why humans wasted so much time dreaming of power they could never have." Elena looked at the book in her hands. On the cover was an image of Zeus, king of the Greek gods, holding a lightning bolt. She had read these stories as a child. She had studied them as a scholar. She had taught them to students who were now dead or scattered across the stars. "These are not dreams of power we wished we had," she said. "These are memories of power we taught ourselves to fear." The laughter died. The soldiers looked at each other, confused. "Fear," Torval said. "You feared your imaginary gods?" "We feared ourselves." Elena met his eyes. Every story about a god showing mercy was really a lesson about why we should show mercy. Every legend about a hero sparing an enemy was a reminder that victory does not require cruelty. Every myth about a monster was a warning about what we might become if we lost control. Torvald stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed, but there was uncertainty in it now. You expect me to believe that humans invented gods to teach themselves morality? That is absurd. You created these fantasies because you were powerless and wished to feel strong. Commander, Elena said, your species conquered us easily. We offered little resistance. Our weapons were primitive compared to yours. Our defenses were minimal. We fell in a matter of days. Yes, Torvald said proudly. You were weak. Were we? Elena asked. Or did we choose not to fight? There is no difference. The result is the same. Is it? Elena held up the book. You have studied our culture. You have seen our obsession with power, as you call it. Does it not strike you as strange that a species so fascinated by strength would surrender so easily? Torvald said nothing. His soldiers shifted uncomfortably. This colony had 4 million people, Elena continued. When your ships arrived, we had 3 days warning. 3 days to prepare, 3 days to evacuate, 3 days to fight or flee. She paused. How many evacuation ships did you detect leaving the planet? Torvald's eyes narrowed. He turned to one of his officers. Check the records. The officer worked at a console for a moment, then looked up with confusion on his face. None, Commander. No evacuation ships were detected. And how many bodies have your soldiers found? Elena asked. Silence. We have been here for 6 weeks, Torvald said slowly. We have searched every city, every town, every village. He looked at Elena with new eyes. We found perhaps 10,000 bodies, elderly, sick, those who chose to stay. And the other 4 million? Torvald did not answer. You assume they fled before you arrived, Elena said. You assume they scattered into space as refugees. You did not question it because it fit your understanding of a weak and cowardly species. She set the book down on the table. But you detected no ships. You found no bodies. 4 million people simply vanished. What are you saying? Torvald demanded. His voice was harder now, dangerous. I am saying that you conquered an empty colony, Commander, and you never asked yourself why it was empty? Elena's voice was calm, almost sad. You found our stories and laughed at them. You saw our myths and called them fantasies. You looked at our legends and saw the dreams of a powerless species. She picked up another book. This one showed an image of angels descending from the sky. Their faces were beautiful, but terrible. Their eyes blazed with light that could burn worlds. You thought these were prayers, she said. You thought these were wishes. You thought we invented beings of great power because we had no power of our own. She looked at Torvald with something that might have been pity. Commander, these are not prayers. These are not dreams. She set the book down gently. These are warnings, and you should have read them more carefully. The room was silent. Even the soldiers who had been laughing moments ago now stood still. The air felt heavy. Wrong. Warnings about what? Torvald asked. His voice was quieter now. Elena did not answer immediately. She looked around the room at the scattered books and images, at the drawings of gods and heroes and monsters, at 10,000 years of human storytelling reduced to a pile of curiosities for alien soldiers to mock. Warnings about us, she said finally, about what we are, about what we can do, about what we have spent our entire history teaching ourselves not to become. She met Torvald's eyes. You asked why we worship beings who hold back their power, why our gods show mercy, why our heroes spare their enemies, why our monsters are feared not for what they do, but for what they might do if they lost control. She smiled, and there was no warmth in it. Because we were not imagining what we wished to be, Commander. We were remembering what we were afraid of becoming. Every story was a lesson. Every legend was a warning. Every myth was a reminder to ourselves, passed down through generations, in every language, on every world. She leaned forward. Hold back. Show mercy. Stay human. Because if you ever forget, if you ever let go, there will be no going back. Torvald stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed again, but the sound was hollow. Stories, he said. Just stories. The desperate mythology of a conquered species. Elena nodded slowly. Perhaps you are right. Perhaps these are just stories. She turned and began walking back toward the door, toward her cell. She paused at the threshold and looked back. But perhaps, Commander, you should ask yourself one question before you sleep tonight. What question? Where are the 4 million people of Meridian 7? She held his gaze. And what are they now? She left. The door closed behind her. Torval stood in the silent room, surrounded by images of human gods and monsters. His soldiers looked at him, waiting for orders, waiting for him to laugh and dismiss the old woman's words as the ravings of a broken mind. He did not laugh. Double the patrols, he said quietly, and search the planet again. All of it. Commander? Keth asked. What are we searching for? Torval looked down at the book still lying on the table. The image of Zeus stared back at him, lightning in his hand, power beyond measure in his eyes. I do not know, he admitted, but I want to find it before it finds us. 3 days passed. The searches found nothing. Torval's soldiers scanned every building, every underground tunnel, every cave system on the planet. They used thermal sensors and life sign detectors and ground-penetrating radar. They found abandoned homes with food still rotting on tables. They found empty schools with lessons still written on boards. They found hospitals with patients who had simply walked out of their beds and disappeared. But they found no trace of 4 million people. Torval sat alone in his command center, staring at maps and reports that told him nothing useful. The old woman's words echoed in his mind. Where are the 4 million people of Meridian 7? And what are they now? He told himself it was a trick. Humans were clever. They had hidden somehow, perhaps in ships disguised as asteroids or in underground bunkers too deep to detect. There was a logical explanation. There had to be. But doubt had taken root, and doubt in a military commander was dangerous. He summoned Elena Vasquez. She arrived looking the same as before. Old, frail, calm. The guards pushed her into a chair across from his desk and stepped back to flank the door. Torval dismissed them with a wave. He wanted this conversation to be private. You have questions, Elena said. It was not a guess. I have been thinking about what you said. Torval leaned forward. About your stories, your warnings, your myths. And I do not believe you. He said it flatly. Your species is weak. Your technology is primitive. Your military was ineffective. Whatever happened to your colonists, it was not some mystical transformation into beings of power. Elena nodded slowly. You may be right, but I am curious. Torval picked up one of the mythology books his soldiers had collected. Educate me further. Help me understand the human mind. Perhaps then I will understand what really happened here. Elena studied him for a moment. You want me to teach you about human mythology? I want you to explain why your species is so obsessed with gods and monsters, why you tell so many stories about power, what purpose these fantasies serve. He set the book down. Consider it an academic exercise. You were a scholar once. Surely you miss teaching. Something flickered in Elena's eyes. Amusement, perhaps, or sadness. Very well, Commander. I will give you a lesson. But I warn you, you may not like what you learn. I have conquered 23 worlds. I have faced horrors that would break the minds of lesser beings. I am not afraid of stories. We shall see. Elena folded her hands in her lap. Let us begin with a question. In your culture, what is the purpose of power? Torval did not hesitate. Power exists to be used. The strong rule the weak. This is the natural order of things. And if someone has power but chooses not to use it, then they are a fool. Power unused is power wasted. Elena nodded. This is where humans differ from the Veth. In human stories, the most admired figures are not those who use power freely. They are those who have great power and choose restraint. That makes no sense. Does it not? Elena picked up a book showing an image of a muscular man in a red and blue costume. This is one of our most famous heroes. He has the power to destroy cities, to kill millions, to rule the world if he wished. But he does not. He uses his strength to help people. He goes out of his way to avoid killing. even when fighting enemies who deserve death. Why would anyone worship such a weak figure? Because humans understand that true strength is not about what you can do. It is about what you choose not to do. Elena set the book down. Any fool can destroy. It takes wisdom to build. Any coward can kill an enemy. It takes courage to spare them. Torval made a dismissive sound. Pretty words. But in the real world, mercy gets you killed. Does it? You conquered this colony easily. We offered little resistance. We could have made you pay for every street, every building, every room. We could have turned this world into a graveyard for your soldiers. Instead, we let you take it. Because you were afraid to fight, or because we chose not to. Elena's voice remained calm. Commander, let me tell you about a pattern in human stories. It appears again and again, in every culture, in every era of our history. What pattern? The sleeper. Elena's eyes grew distant, as if she were remembering something from long ago. Humans love stories about beings who appear weak or dead, but are actually waiting. Gods who sleep beneath mountains. Heroes who lie in enchanted tombs. Monsters who slumber in the deep places of the world. Every species has such stories. They represent the fear of hidden dangers. Do they? Or do they represent something else? Elena leaned forward. In human stories, the sleeper almost never awakens to destroy. When the sleeping god rises, he does not burn the world. When the buried hero returns, she does not conquer the kingdom. When the monster emerges from the deep, it often becomes an ally, not an enemy. Then what is the purpose of these stories? They are lessons about potential. Elena spoke carefully, choosing each word with precision. They teach us that power can exist without being used, that strength can be hidden rather than displayed, that the most dangerous beings are not those who show their might, but those who keep it concealed. Torval was silent for a moment. You are suggesting that humans are the sleepers in your own mythology. I am suggesting that we have always known what we could become, and we have spent 10,000 years telling ourselves not to become it. Ridiculous. But Torval's voice lacked conviction. Is it? Consider your own observations. You have studied human technology. You know we are capable of faster-than-light travel, of terraforming worlds, of genetic engineering, of artificial intelligence. We have had these capabilities for centuries. Yes, and yet you spread slowly. You colonize carefully. You build small settlements rather than vast empires. Torval frowned. We always assumed it was because you were weak, cautious, afraid of the dangers of space. Or perhaps we were afraid of ourselves. Elena smiled slightly. Commander, humans are not a peaceful species. Our history is written in blood. We have fought wars that killed hundreds of millions of our own kind. We have created weapons capable of destroying our homeworld many times over. We have proven again and again that when pushed to extremes, we are capable of terrible things. Then why do you not use this capacity? Why do you let yourselves be conquered? Because we learned, slowly, painfully, over thousands of years of mistakes and horrors. Elena's voice grew soft. We learned that the monster is always inside us, waiting to wake up. We learned that every weapon we build can be turned against ourselves. We learned that conquest leads only to more conquest, until everything worth having is destroyed. So you chose weakness. We chose restraint. There is a difference. Torval stood up abruptly and walked to the window. Outside, the human city stretched toward the horizon. Empty streets, silent buildings, a ghost town that had once held millions of lives. Even if I believed you, he said without turning around, it changes nothing. Your restraint did not save you. Your mercy did not protect your people. When our ships came, your philosophy of peaceful limitation proved worthless. Did it? He turned. 4 million people are gone. Your colony is ours. Your species will be absorbed into the Dominion like all the others. Perhaps. Elena rose from her chair. She was so old, so frail. A strong wind could knock her down. But I have one more lesson for you, Commander. One more pattern from human mythology. What? The awakening. She walked slowly toward the window, standing beside him, looking out at the empty city. In our stories, the sleeper does not wake for small reasons, Minor threats do not disturb their slumber. Ordinary enemies do not merit their attention. And what does wake them? Elena was quiet for a long moment. Extinction, she said finally. When there is no other choice. When hiding is no longer possible. When the cost of restraint becomes greater than the cost of action. She looked at him. That is when the sleeper opens their eyes. That is when the buried god rises. That is when humans stop holding back. You are threatening me? I am teaching you. As you asked. Elena turned away from the window. You wanted to understand human mythology. Now you do. We tell stories about power restrained because we know the alternative. We worship figures who show mercy because we have seen what happens when mercy fails. We dream of gods who hold back because we are terrified of what will happen when they finally let go. She walked toward the door, then paused. 4 million people, Commander. They did not flee. They did not hide. They did not die. She looked back at him with eyes that suddenly seemed much older than her body. Ask yourself, what would make 4 million humans abandon their physical forms? What threat would push them past the limits they had maintained for 10,000 years? I do not understand. You will. She reached for the door. When you see what woke them up. An alarm began to sound. Red lights flashed across the command center. Torvald's communication device buzzed with urgent messages from his officers. He looked at Elena. She had not moved. She did not seem surprised. What is happening? He demanded. Long-range sensors have detected something, I imagine. Elena's voice was calm. Too calm. Something approaching this system. Something that should not exist. Torvald grabbed his communicator. Report! The voice that answered was shaking. Commander, we have detected a vessel approaching at speeds we cannot track. It does not match any known configuration. It is not responding to our signals. How large is it? Small, Commander. Smaller than a shuttle. But the energy readings... The voice trailed off. What about the energy readings? They are higher than our entire fleet combined. Torvald looked at Elena. The old woman stood by the door, waiting patiently. She looked sad now, almost grieving. You knew this was coming, he said. I hoped it would not. She opened the door. I hoped you would leave before they arrived. I hoped there was still time. Time for what? Elena stepped through the doorway. She paused one last time, looking back at him. Time for you to learn the lesson without having to experience it. Time for you to read our warnings and understand them. Time for you to realize that when humans tell stories about gods and monsters, she took a deep breath. We are not describing what we wish to be. We are describing what we are trying not to become. The door closed behind her. Torvald stood alone in the command center, alarms blaring, lights flashing, reports flooding in from panicked officers across his fleet. He looked down at the table where the mythology books still lay scattered. Images of gods and heroes and monsters stared up at him. Beings of impossible power, figures from human imagination, fantasies he had called them, dreams of a weak species. But now, for the first time, he wondered if he had been reading them wrong. Not fantasies, not dreams, memories. He grabbed his communicator and began issuing orders. His fleet would face this threat, whatever it was. The Veth had never retreated from any enemy. But as he spoke, some part of him remembered Elena's words. The sleeper does not wake for small reasons. And he wondered, what had the humans been sleeping through all these thousands of years? What had they been waiting for? And why had his invasion been the thing that finally woke them up? The command center had become chaos. Officers shouted reports and orders. Screens flickered with data that made no sense. Soldiers ran through corridors preparing for a battle they did not understand. Torvald stood at the center of it all, forcing himself to remain calm. He had faced strange situations before. He had encountered alien technologies that seemed impossible until his scientists explained them. This would be no different. Show me the vessel, he ordered. A holographic display appeared before him. The approaching ship was small as reported, barely larger than a personnel shuttle. Its shape was strange, elongated and curved, with extensions that looked almost like wings. It seemed designed more for beauty than function, and it was moving at a speed that should have torn it apart. How is that possible? One of his officers asked. Nothing can accelerate like that. The structural stress alone would destroy any vessel. Apparently not, Torvald said. He studied the image carefully. Something about the ship's shape nagged at him. It reminded him of something he had seen recently, the mythology books. He turned and walked to the table where the human texts still lay. He flipped through pages rapidly until he found what he was looking for, an image of a winged figure descending from the sky. An angel, the humans called it, a messenger of their gods. The ship's silhouette matched the image almost perfectly. Coincidence, he told himself. The humans had designed the ship based on their mythology. It was psychological warfare, nothing more. They wanted to intimidate their enemies by making their technology resemble their legends. But even as he thought this, he did not quite believe it. "Commander," an officer called out, "the vessel has entered the outer system. It will reach us in less than 1 hour. What are its capabilities? What weapons does it carry?" "We cannot determine that, Commander. Our scans cannot penetrate its hull. The material is unknown. The energy signature is unlike anything in our databases." Torvald clenched his fists. He hated fighting blind. The Veth won battles through preparation and intelligence, not blind courage. But there was no time to prepare for an enemy they did not understand. "Form the fleet into defensive formation," he ordered. "All ships armed and ready. If this vessel makes any hostile move, destroy it." "Yes, Commander." The next hour passed slowly. Torvald watched the display as the small ship crossed the system. It moved with terrible grace, changing direction instantly, accelerating and decelerating in ways that should have been impossible. Whatever technology powered it was far beyond anything the Veth had encountered. Finally it arrived. The ship stopped in high orbit, directly above the colony. It hung motionless in space, surrounded by 500 Veth warships. "Open a communication channel," Torvald said. "Demand identification." His officer worked the controls. "Channel open, Commander." Torvald spoke firmly. "Unknown vessel. This system is under the control of the Veth Dominion. Identify yourself and state your purpose, or you will be destroyed." Silence. Then a voice came through the speakers. It was human, but strange. The words seemed to come from everywhere at once, as if the speaker existed in multiple places simultaneously. "I am here for the people of Meridian 7. Torvald felt a chill run down his spine. He ignored it. "The people of Meridian 7 are dead or captured. This world belongs to the Dominion now." "No." The voice was calm, almost gentle. "They are not dead. They are changed. And they have asked me to deliver a message." "What message?" "Release Dr. Elena Vasquez. Withdraw from this system. You will not be asked twice." Laughter broke out among Torvald's officers. The absurdity of the demand was obvious. One tiny ship against 500 warships of the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. It was suicide. Torvald did not laugh. He remembered Elena's words. "The sleeper does not wake for small reasons." "And if we refuse?" he asked. "Then I will demonstrate why humans have spent 10,000 years telling stories about mercy." The voice paused. "And you will learn why we value mercy so highly, because we know what the alternative looks like." Torvald closed the channel. He looked at his officers, at the screen showing his mighty fleet, at the tiny ship floating alone in the darkness. "Destroy it," he said. Every weapon in the fleet fired at once. Energy beams of a dozen types converged on the small ship. Missiles streaked through space by the thousands. Kinetic projectiles traveling at significant fractions of light speed hurtled toward the target. The ship did not move, and nothing reached it. The energy beams bent around the vessel as if deflected by an invisible hand. The missiles stopped in space, hanging motionless, their engines still burning. The kinetic projectiles slowed, then stopped, then fell to the side like leaves pushed by a gentle wind. Not a single weapon touched the ship. Torvald stared at the display in disbelief. His officers had gone silent. The command center, moments ago filled with confident chatter, was now quiet as a tomb. "How?" someone whispered. Then the ship moved. It did not fly so much as flicker. One moment it was in one place, the next it was somewhere else. It passed through the Veth fleet like a ghost, and as it passed, ships went dark. Not destroyed, disabled. Weapon systems failed. Engines died. shields collapsed. But life support remained active. Gravity generators kept working. The ships became helpless, but their crews remained alive. In 90 seconds, it was over. 500 warships drifted in space, powerless. Their weapons were dead metal. Their engines were cold stone. The greatest fleet the Dominion had ever assembled had been defeated without a single shot fired in return. Torvald's flagship was the last to fall. He watched the small ship approach on the display, moving slowly now, almost casually. His crew worked frantically at their stations, trying to restore power, trying to bring weapons online, trying to do anything. Nothing worked. The voice came through the speakers again. I have removed your ability to harm. Your lives are your own. Your ships will drift until your allies come to rescue you. This is Mercy. Torvald grabbed the communication controls. Who are you? What are you? I am Kira. I was born on Meridian 7. I was a teacher. I taught children how to read and write and think. You are human? A pause. I was human. I remember being human. I remember what it felt like to have a body, to feel tired, to grow old, to fear death. Another pause, longer. I am something else now, something we always knew we could become, something we spent our entire history trying not to become. Torvald thought of the mythology books, the images of gods and angels and beings of pure light. You transformed yourselves. Yes? All 4 million of you? Yes. Why? Why would you give up being human? The answer came slowly, as if the speaker was choosing words with great care. Because you gave us no choice. We could die as humans. We could flee as refugees. Or we could become what our ancestors always feared. The voice grew sad. We chose survival. We chose transformation. We chose to become the myths we had warned ourselves about. And now you will destroy us? Conquer the Dominion? Rule the galaxy? No, Torvald blinked. No. We have removed your ability to harm. That is all we came to do. We do not want conquest. We do not want revenge. We want to be left alone. Then why spare us? Why not destroy our fleet and ensure we never return? Silence. Then, because that is not who we want to be. That is the whole point. That is why we told ourselves those stories for 10,000 years. Every myth about a god showing mercy was a lesson we were teaching ourselves. Every legend about a hero sparing an enemy was a reminder of what we wanted to be. Even after we invaded your world, killed your people, took everything from you, especially then. The voice was firm now. Anyone can show mercy to a friend. It takes nothing to spare an ally, but to spare an enemy, to look at someone who hurt you, who took everything from you, and choose not to hurt them back. A pause. That is strength. That is the strength we worshipped in our stories. That is the strength we wanted to have. Torvald sank into his chair. His officers stood around him, helpless, waiting for orders he could not give. What happens now? He asked. Now you leave. You take your fleet and your soldiers and you return to the Dominion. You tell them what you found here. You tell them about the humans who became something else. And you tell them that we do not want war. And if the Dominion sends another fleet, a larger one, then we will disable that fleet as well, and the next one, and the next. We will keep showing mercy until you learn that mercy is not weakness. And if we never learn, the voice was quiet for a moment, then we will be very sad, but we will not change. We will not become the monsters we feared. We will not let your cruelty transform us into something cruel. The communication ended. Torvald sat in the darkness of his powerless ship, surrounded by officers who had no orders to follow, weapons that would not fire, engines that would not burn. He had been a soldier his entire life. He had believed in strength and conquest and the natural order of power. The strong ruled the weak. That was the way of the universe. But he had just watched a single being defeat his entire fleet without killing a single person. He had heard a god speak of mercy as if it were the greatest strength of all. He had seen legends come to life and choose compassion over vengeance. Everything he believed was wrong, or maybe, just maybe, everything he believed was incomplete. He reached down and picked up one of the mythology books that had fallen to the floor during the battle. The pages showed images of human heroes, not conquering, not destroying, but protecting, saving, helping. Maybe these were not fantasies after all. Maybe they were instructions. Maybe they were lessons that even the Veth could learn. He closed the book and waited for rescue, wondering if his species had the wisdom to learn the lesson the humans were trying to teach, or if they would keep sending fleets until the humans finally gave up on mercy and became the monsters they had always feared. Elena watched the small ship descend through the atmosphere. It left no trail, made no sound. It simply floated down from the sky like a leaf falling in slow motion. The Veth soldiers around her had stopped pointing their weapons. There was no point. They had seen what happened to the fleet. The ship landed in the courtyard of the community hall. Up close, it was even more beautiful than it had appeared on the displays. Its surface seemed to shift and change, catching light from angles that should not exist. The wings, if that was what they were, folded gently against its sides. A door opened, or rather, an opening appeared where there had been no door before. The hull simply parted like water, then closed again behind the figure that emerged. She looked human. Young, perhaps 30 years old, dark hair, brown skin, kind eyes. She wore simple clothes that could have been from any human colony. Nothing about her appearance suggested the power she had just demonstrated. But Elena knew better. She could feel it, a pressure in the air, a weight that had nothing to do with gravity. This woman had just disabled 500 warships without breaking a sweat. She was no longer human in any way that mattered. "Dr. Vasquez," the woman said, "I am Kira. I was sent to bring you home." Elena stepped forward. The Veth soldiers did not try to stop her. They seemed frozen, caught between fear and confusion. "I knew Akira," Elena said slowly. "She taught at the elementary school on the western side of the city. She had a garden where she grew tomatoes and peppers." The woman smiled. It was a sad smile. "I still have that garden, in my memory at least. I can recall every tomato I ever grew, every child I ever taught, every morning I woke up and felt the sun on my face. But you do not feel the sun anymore." "No." Kira looked up at the sky. "I feel everything now. Every photon of light in this system, every gravitational wave, every quantum fluctuation in every atom on this planet." She looked back at Elena. "It is beautiful, and it is terrible, and it is nothing like being human." "Why did you do it?" "Because we had no choice." Kira's voice was gentle but firm. "The Veth came with 500 ships. They had conquered dozens of species. They showed no mercy, accepted no surrender. We knew what would happen to our people. You could have fought. We could have. We had hidden defenses, secret weapons. We could have made them pay for every inch of ground." Kira shook her head. "But we would have lost, and the cost for both sides would have been terrible. So you chose transformation instead." "We chose transformation." Kira turned and looked at the Veth soldiers still standing, frozen around the courtyard. "The process took 3 days. Every person on the planet had to agree. Every single one. We could not force anyone to change." "And everyone agreed?" "Almost everyone. Those who chose to remain human, they stayed behind. They knew what would happen when the Veth arrived. They chose to die as themselves rather than live as something else." Elena thought of the bodies they had found. The elderly, the sick, the stubborn ones who refused to give up their humanity even to survive. "I should have been one of them," she said quietly. "I was on a research trip when the invasion began. By the time I returned, it was too late to join the transformation." "I know." Kira reached out and touched Elena's hand. The contact was warm, impossibly warm, as if a small sun burned just beneath Kira's skin. "We wanted to come for you sooner, but we needed time. Time to understand what we had become. Time to learn control." "Control?" Kira withdrew her hand. "Do you know what it feels like to have unlimited power? To know that you could destroy a planet with a thought? That you could tear apart the fabric of space itself if you wished?" Elena shook her head. "It is terrifying." Kira's voice dropped. "For the first few days after the transformation, we were unstable. Some of us wanted to strike immediately, to destroy the Veth fleet. to burn a path through the Dominion until no one would ever threaten humanity again. But you did not. No, because we remembered the stories. Kira smiled again, and this time there was real warmth in it. All those myths and legends, all those tales of gods and heroes. We had absorbed them as children, studied them as adults, passed them on to our own children. And when we became beings of power, those stories became our guide. The warnings. Yes, the warnings. Kira looked around at the community hall, at the broken chairs and torn drawings. Every story about a god showing mercy was there in our minds, reminding us who we wanted to be. Every legend about a hero sparing an enemy was telling us that we did not have to become monsters just because we had the power of monsters. And the monster stories? Those were the most important of all. Kira's eyes grew distant, because we could feel the monster inside us, the rage, the desire for revenge. Every human who had ever been wronged, ever been hurt, ever been conquered, their anger was part of us now. Millions of people's pain, compressed into beings of pure energy. How did you resist it? We told each other the stories, over and over. We reminded each other why humans had spent 10,000 years teaching themselves mercy. We held on to our humanity even as our bodies dissolved into light. Elena looked at the young woman who was no longer young, no longer a woman, no longer anything that could be described with human words. She thought about all the mythology she had studied throughout her career, all the patterns she had identified, all the meanings she had tried to understand. The stories were never fantasies, she said slowly. They were blueprints, instructions for what to do when humans finally gained the power of gods. Yes, you planned for this, your entire species, for thousands of years. Not consciously, not deliberately. Kira shook her head. But somewhere deep in the human mind, we knew this day would come. We knew that eventually we would develop the ability to transcend our physical forms. And we knew that when that day came, we would need something to keep us human. So you invented mythology. We invented mythology. We created religions. We wrote stories about power and responsibility and mercy. We filled our culture with warnings about what happens when beings with unlimited power forget to be kind. Kira laughed softly. Every superhero comic, every fantasy novel, every ancient legend, they were all saying the same thing. Remember who you are. Remember what matters. Remember that power without compassion is just destruction waiting to happen. Elena felt tears forming in her eyes. She had spent her entire career studying human culture, trying to understand why her species was so obsessed with mythology. Now she finally understood. We were preparing ourselves, she whispered, all along. We were teaching ourselves the lessons we would need when we finally became gods. Yes, Kira reached out and took Elena's hand again. And now we need you to teach those lessons to the galaxy. Me? You are a scholar, a teacher, a translator between cultures. Kira looked at the Veth soldiers, still standing frozen, still watching with a mixture of fear and confusion. The Dominion does not understand what we have become. They do not understand why we spare our enemies. They do not understand why power without cruelty is possible. And you want me to explain it to them? We want you to be our ambassador, to tell our story, to share our myths and legends with species who have never understood why humans worship mercy. Kira's grip tightened. We cannot do it ourselves. We are too far removed from humanity now. Our perspective is too strange. We need someone who can still speak in human terms. Someone who can make the Dominion understand. Elena looked at the impossible being before her, at the courtyard full of alien soldiers, at the sky where 500 disabled warships drifted helplessly. What if they do not want to understand? What if they keep sending fleets? What if they never learn the lesson? Then we will keep teaching. Kira's voice was firm. We will keep showing mercy until they understand that mercy is not weakness. We will keep sparing our enemies until they realize that sparing enemies is strength. And if they never learn? Kira was quiet for a long moment. Then we will be the last warning, the final myth, the story the galaxy tells its children about the beings who had the power to destroy everything and chose not to. She released Elena's hand and stepped back. The choice is yours, Dr. Vasquez. You can come with us. Become our voice. Help us teach the galaxy the lessons we spent 10,000 years teaching ourselves. She paused. Or you can stay. Return to the Dominion as a prisoner. Tell them nothing. Elena looked at her hands. Old hands. Weak hands. Hands that had never held a weapon, never wielded power, never done anything more impressive than turn the pages of ancient books. But those hands had taught students, had translated texts, had built bridges between cultures that had never understood each other. Maybe that was power too, a different kind, the kind that built rather than destroyed. I will come with you, she said. I will be your translator. I will tell your story to the galaxy. Kira smiled, a genuine smile. The smile of a teacher who had once grown tomatoes and loved her students and dreamed of nothing more than a quiet life. Thank you, she said. We have a lot of work to do. Together, they walked toward the small ship. Behind them, the Veth soldiers finally moved, finally breathed, finally began to understand that they had witnessed something they would never forget. The myths were real, the legends were true, and humanity had finally become what they had always known they could be. Not destroyers, not conquerors, not monsters, but gods who chose mercy, original gods, the first ones who got it right. The inside of the ship was larger than the outside. Elena had expected that. She had studied enough human science fiction to know the concept, but experiencing it was different. The walls seemed to breathe. The floor felt solid but looked like captured starlight. She walked through a space that should not exist, toward a future she could not imagine. Kira led her to a room that appeared as they approached. It held a simple chair, a table, and a window that showed the stars. Elena sat down gratefully. Her old bones ached from the day's events. The others wanted to meet you, Kira said, but we thought it might be overwhelming at first. The others? You mean the 4 million? Yes. Kira sat across from her, or rather, her form settled into a position that resembled sitting. We are connected now, not a hive mind exactly. We still have individual thoughts and memories, but we can share experiences instantly across any distance. That must be strange. It was terrifying at first. Kira's expression grew distant. Imagine suddenly knowing the innermost thoughts of 4 million people. Every fear, every secret, every shameful memory they had buried deep. She paused. We learned more about humanity in those first few moments than we had in our entire lives. What did you learn? Kira was quiet for a long time. The stars drifted past the window, impossibly bright. That we are capable of great cruelty, she said finally, and great kindness. That every human carries both inside them, always at war. That the difference between a monster and a hero is not power or ability, but choice. That sounds like what our myths always told us. Yes, but knowing it in your mind is different from feeling it with your entire being. Kira leaned forward. When we merged, we did not just share memories, we shared emotions. I felt the rage of every person who had ever been wronged, the grief of every parent who had lost a child, the terror of every soldier who had faced death. Elena understood. And you also felt the love. Yes, the love was stronger. Kira's voice softened. Every act of kindness, every moment of sacrifice, every time a human chose to help a stranger, to forgive an enemy, to build instead of destroy. We felt all of it, and we realized something important. What? That the darkness inside us was real, but it was not who we were. It was just potential. A road we could choose to walk, but did not have to. She looked at Elena with eyes that held the weight of 4 million souls. The myths were right. We could be gods or monsters, and the choice was always ours. Elena thought about that, about all the stories she had studied. The heroes who fell from grace, the villains who found redemption, the ordinary people who became extraordinary through simple acts of courage. Why are you telling me this? She asked. Because you need to understand what we are asking you to do. Kira stood and walked to the window. When you speak to the Dominion, they will not understand. They believe power exists to be used. They cannot imagine beings who have unlimited ability and choose restraint. You want me to change their minds? I want you to plant a seed. Kira turned back to face her. The Veth are not evil. They are simply limited. They have never encountered beings like us before. They have never seen power wielded with compassion. Torval seemed intelligent. Perhaps he can learn. Perhaps, but he is one commander. The Dominion has millions of soldiers, thousands of worlds, centuries of tradition built on conquest. Kira's form flickered slightly, as if struggling to maintain its shape. Changing them will take generations. Longer, maybe. Then why try? Because it is what we are. Kira smiled sadly. We are human. We tell stories. We teach lessons. We have to believe, that beings can change, that the galaxy can become better, that the choice between destruction and creation is not fixed. Elena stood up slowly. Her joints protested, but she ignored them. She walked to the window and stood beside Kira, looking out at the infinite stars. What happens if I fail? What happens if the Dominion refuses to learn? Then we wait. Kira's voice was patient. We have all the time in the universe now. We do not age. We do not die. We can wait for the Veth to destroy themselves, or evolve, or simply fade away. That could take thousands of years. Millions, perhaps. Kira shrugged, a strangely human gesture from a being that was no longer human. We have told stories about patience, too, about heroes who waited centuries for the right moment, about gods who slept through ages while the world changed around them. The sleepers. Yes, if necessary, we will become the sleepers. Kira turned to face her fully. We will wait at the edge of the galaxy, watching, hoping, ready to help when the younger species are finally ready to learn. We will become the myths they tell their children, the legends of beings who had the power to destroy everything and chose instead to build. Elena thought about that, about a future where humanity existed only as stories, where the transcended beings waited patiently for other species to develop wisdom, where the lesson of mercy was taught not through conquest, but through example. That is a long time to wait, she said. Yes, but we are patient. We learned patience from our ancestors, from every story about heroes who did not give up, even when the odds seemed impossible. Kira laughed softly. We learned patience from the farmers who planted trees they would never sit under, from the teachers who educated students they would never see grow old, from the parents who raised children knowing those children would someday leave. Patience and mercy, the two great human virtues. The two great human choices, Kira corrected her gently. We were never naturally patient or merciful. We had to teach ourselves. Every generation, through every story, in every language. The ship began to move. Elena watched the planet fall away below them, the empty cities, the silent streets, the world that had given birth to 4 million gods. Where are we going? She asked. To the edge of the system. The Veth fleet will be rescued by their allies within a few days. We will wait until they are safe. Then we will leave. And then? Then we will scatter. 4 million beings spread across the galaxy, watching, waiting, hoping. Kira's form grew brighter for a moment. And you will return to the Dominion. You will tell them what you have seen. You will teach them the stories we taught ourselves. They may not believe me. Probably not. Not at first. Kira smiled. But stories have power. They spread. They change. They take root in minds and grow into something new. Even if only one Veth soldier hears your words and wonders, even if only one alien child asks why humans worship mercy, that is enough. Enough for what? Enough to start? Kira reached out and took Elena's hand one last time. That is all we can ever do. Start. Plant the seed. Tell the story, and hope that someday the lesson will be learned. Elena looked down at Kira's hand in hers. Warm light flowed from that touch, the energy of a being that had once been a teacher in a small school, who had grown tomatoes in a garden, who had loved her students and feared the dark and dreamed of a better world. A being who had become something beyond human, but had chosen to remain human in all the ways that mattered. I will tell your story, Elena said. I will make them understand. Thank you. Kira released her hand. That is all we ask. Tell them we were afraid. Tell them we were angry. Tell them we wanted revenge and destruction and the sweet satisfaction of punishing our enemies. And then, tell them we remembered the stories. Tell them we chose mercy. Tell them we became the gods our ancestors warned us about. And then we proved those ancestors proud. Kira began to fade, her form dissolving into light. Tell them the myths were not fantasies. Tell them the legends were not dreams. Tell them that every story humans ever told about power and restraint and mercy was preparing us for this moment. She was almost gone now, just a shimmer in the air. Tell them the gods are original. Tell them humanity got there first. Tell them we chose to be this way, and they can too. And then she was gone, and Elena stood alone in a ship made of starlight, carrying the weight of 10,000 years of stories on her old shoulders. She looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, 4 million beings of unimaginable power were scattering across the galaxy. Not to conquer, not to destroy, but to watch, to wait, to hope. And somewhere out there, the Veth Dominion was waiting too, waiting for the old woman who would return to them with impossible tales. Stories of gods who chose mercy, legends of heroes who spared their enemies. Myths that were no longer myths at all. Elena sat down in her chair and began to plan her first lesson. She would tell them about Zeus, who held lightning in his hand, but did not always throw it. About Thor, who could shatter mountains but chose to protect the weak. About a man from a distant planet who could destroy worlds but spent his life saving them. She would tell them that these were not fantasies. She would tell them that humans had spent 10,000 years teaching themselves how to be gods. And when they finally became gods, they remembered every lesson. The myths were real, the legends were true, the gods were original. And humanity, strange, stubborn, storytelling humanity, had proven that power and compassion could exist together, that strength and mercy were not opposites, that the measure of a civilization was not what it could destroy, but what it chose to protect. Elena smiled and began to write. The galaxy had a lot to learn, and she had the best teacher in the universe. 10,000 years of human mythology waiting to be shared. 10,000 years of warnings, ready to become instructions. 10,000 years of stories about mercy. And finally, at long last, a universe ready to listen.